Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Erin. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Student Recruitment Officer for UBC Engineering. So glad to have you in attendance today. We are celebrating International Women in Engineering Day today. Earlier this week, we also celebrated the National Indigenous Peoples Day as well. So it's been a busy week of recognizing lots of amazing people that are part of our community. I'm going to pass it over right now to Coralie, who's going to take it away for the rest of the presentation today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. So my name is Coralie, and I'm a fifth-year biomedical engineering student at UBC. I'm super excited to be giving this presentation to you all on why I chose to become an engineer and some of the fun pathways that you can take if you choose to go down the road of engineering. I hope that by the end of this presentation, you have a better idea of what engineers do and how you can become one too. So I'd first like to start off with acknowledging that I am presenting today on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Hunkaminam-speaking Musqueam people, and I'm very grateful to be living and learning on this land every day, and I encourage you to explore the history of the land which you're currently located on. So like I said, my name is Coralie. I'm fourth year going into fifth year biomedical engineering at UBC. I'm really excited to be talking to you today about engineering and how you can start your journey as an engineer. So a few things about me, I'm pretty obsessed with robotics and medical technology. So I'll take any opportunity to merge these two together and see what kind of innovations I can come up with. And I'm also a big film enthusiast and aspiring writer. So in the free time that I have, when I'm not in classes, I do enjoy writing and watching movies and maybe even producing a movie one day, who knows? So in terms of the agenda, we're going to start off with going over what is engineering. Then I'll move into my path to engineering and how I chose to pursue it. I will then talk about some career opportunities that are available to people who choose to go into engineering, some of the social responsibilities of an engineer, and lastly, I'll do a little engineering demonstration to show some biomedical engineering principles. So first of all, what is engineering? When I was in high school, I first thought that engineering had to do with building bridges because a lot of people talked about that around me. And I was like, okay, cool. Bridges are interesting. Maybe not exactly what I want to go into, but that was my understanding of engineering. And then I thought maybe it had something to do with train conductors because I knew they were also called engineers. Again, very interesting, but clearly I didn't have a really good grasp on what engineering was. And by grade 11 and 12, I knew it had something to do with math and physics, but I still wasn't 100% sure what engineering was. And some of you might be in the same position. So after 5 years of engineering at UBC, I'm still learning about what engineering is, but at a high level, I describe it as applying the principles and fundamentals of math and science to solve real world problems. So this essentially means that there's a distinction between math and science and engineering. So the way I see it is that for math, biology, chemistry, all those things, they're the principles and the fundamentals, the building blocks that allow us to perform engineering. So in the picture, one of the pictures here, I have someone with a hand who's lost some fingers, and this is a real world problem. There are people who have lost limbs around the world or fingers. And we essentially take different kinds of math and sciences to create solutions to problems like these. I've also included some other examples. So there is a person in one of these pictures testing the water in a creek, and that could be some sort of environmental engineering, trying to solve problems with the environment. There's a highway here that's being built, drones that are being built, all to solve different problems by applying these math and science principles. So some of the different kinds of engineering that we have at UBC are listed here. There are currently 14 different kinds of engineering that you can do at our school. And I've just listed them off so that you can see the breadth of different avenues that you could take as an engineer. I know that a lot of people often think that there's just mechanical, electrical, civil, but as you can see on this list, there's a lot I hadn't even heard of when I started. Like I didn't know what geological engineering was or mining engineering. So I do encourage you to look through these programs if you're interested in going to UBC Engineering. And I've also included some companies here where engineers often work at, and some that you might not think that engineers would be at, but we have Netflix, Amazon, TikTok are very popular for software engineers. Tesla and Lululemon, Purdy's Chocolate, even Disney World, we have engineers working there on the different rides. So there's a lot of different opportunities and a lot of companies that you could work at with an engineering degree. So now I'll dive into my path to becoming an engineer. So first, what is biomedical engineering? This is the engineering that I'm in. So biomedical engineering is applying scientific and design principles to solving problems in the medical space. And at UBC, we actually have 4 different streams in biomedical engineering, so I'll describe them each. First, we have biomechanics and biomaterials, and this could entail creating prosthetics, as you see in the picture, or maybe going over sports injuries and understanding how we can prevent them, or creating implants for different surgeries. Then there's the systems and signals or electrical option, and that's the one that I'm particularly in. And in this image here, you see someone using brain waves or brain signals to control a robotic hand. I've always been interested in robotics as well as electronics, so this is why I chose this path. For bioinformatics, a lot of times you take a lot of information about people, about, let's say, their genetic history, and you try to understand maybe their likelihood of getting a certain disease based on a lot of different data about them. And then in cellular bioengineering, one of the hot topics there right now is gene editing. So being able to change the genetic makeup essentially of a person's DNA. And there's also, research into infectious diseases and how we can engineer different vaccines like the COVID-19 vaccine to prevent those. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can take within biomedical engineering. And why did I choose engineering in particular? There were 4 overarching reasons. So the first one was my ACL reconstruction surgery. I tore my ACL, which is a very important ligament in your knee. I tore that when I was in high school, and it was pretty devastating. But when I went into the doctor's office, I got to see a lot of X-ray machines, MRI machines, bone drills, a lot of surgical tools, and I got super interested in that. And so I did some more research, and I didn't know yet that this was biomedical engineering, but I knew that I was really interested in these different tools that were being created and that were being used essentially to treat my knee injury. A second driving factor to becoming, starting to study biomedical engineering were my parents. So my mom's a computer science major and my dad's an applied mathematician. And so I was always surrounded by math and science my entire life, and they really pushed me to explore the world around me through the lens of mathematics and science. So I really appreciated that from them and a lot of support that they gave me. A third reason is my natural curiosity about the world. I love to ask, why do things happen the way they do and how do they happen? So I'd say if you have a natural curiosity for the world, engineering is definitely a good option to look into. And lastly, engineering has a lot of hands-on learning, which I really appreciate. You don't just learn the theory, but you're given opportunities to put that theory into application, build different things, figure out what's wrong with what you built, and then go at it again. So a lot of different ways to do that. And these are the 4 overarching reasons that I picked engineering. And I've just included here a few pictures of me doing engineering things. So I have my team and I winning a healthcare hackathon in the top left-hand corner of my screen. It might be a different corner for you. But a hackathon is essentially a competition where a lot of different teams are brought together to compete against each other to solve a particular problem. And I definitely encourage you all to look into hackathons for high school students or hackathons that you could enter if you're going into UBC, because they're really helpful to teach you team building skills as well as critical thinking. In the picture on the other side on top, I have my student team, the biomedical engineering student team. I'm currently the co-captain of that team, and we work on a lot of different biomedical engineering projects. And it's super fun to be able to work with students from different engineering disciplines, but also different faculties around UBC. In the bottom corner, I have a picture of me doing some product engineering in France, which was my internship last year. Very fun. I got to use this instrument that you see on the screen for the first time. It was a really good learning experience. And then on the last picture, there's me building a robotic hand for my current internship. So like I said, a lot of hands-on work, a lot of teamwork, and a lot of ways to kind of understand how the world works around you. And lastly, I've just included some opportunities that you might want to look into. These are definitely things I wish I'd known when I was in high school. These different programs that are available either through UBC or through other areas. So Women in Engineering, for instance, is a very good group at UBC, and they hold a lot of different seminars and programs for women in high school. So I definitely encourage you to look into that. And I won't go through all of them, but the last one that I want to point out is starting to build your network and trying to cold contact students and professors. So just reaching out to some professors and saying, hey, I'm interested in your research. Could I have a tour of your lab? We actually had a student at my lab 2 days ago who was in grade 10, and he was just coming to look at the technology because he was interested. So I definitely recommend you all try to do that if that's something that you're comfortable with. So now I'll go into some of the career opportunities. Let's say that you've just graduated from your engineering degree and it's time to move on to the next phase, but what exactly can you do with an engineering degree? One option is joining industry, and this means starting a job at a company right out of university with your bachelor's degree. Some of the perks are that there's a pretty nice income after you start working, even just as an entry-level engineer. And the 76,000 is just an average. Some engineering positions pay more, others pay less, but it's definitely something to look into. Also, you get great experience. You get to work on hands-on projects, building impactful technology, and you're constantly learning from people around you. There's people with a lot more experience than you who are willing to teach you new technologies, teach you new software. So it's a great place to go if that's something you're interested in. Another opportunity is to become a professional engineer. And this is something you can do after you've worked for a while in the engineering field. So a professional engineer, or a PEng, is an individual who has been issued a license to practice engineering and holds the highest standards of education, skills, knowledge, and experience. So essentially, you're the most, amongst the most experienced people in your field. And why become a PEng? It gives you a lot more flexibility and improved career options. So if you're looking for higher up positions, maybe project management within a big engineering firm, this would be a great path to go down. Or if you're looking to open your own private firm, then a PEng is something you would need to hold in order to do that. You can work on impactful projects in senior positions, and you have increased responsibility and authority. So you're the person that people would go to ask questions, to make sure all the details of the project are in order. Lots of responsibility and lots of room to impact a lot of people. And you also get a really cool stamp, as you can see here on the screen, with your name on it and your signature. Another path you can take is to go into academia and research if you're interested in innovation and understanding how the world works within a lab space. So some of the options are a master's or a PhD for those interested in continuing their education and working in research. If you're interested in going further after doing your master's and PhD, you can do a postdoc or you can become a researcher. And this just means you're professionally conducting research after completing doctoral studies. And lastly, you can also become a lecturer or a professor. And this is where you would teach at the post-secondary level and just take the research that you've learned and the knowledge that you have and impart that onto other students coming into the engineering space. So some reasons to go into academia: you can pursue research and make advancements in the field you're passionate about. It opens you up to a lot more job opportunities. There's some jobs, especially internationally, that require a master's and sometimes even a PhD to have, and it might be something that you're quite looking forward to. So the master's and PhD is always a great place to go. You can gain a wealth of knowledge in the field you're interested in. And as a researcher, your work hours tend to be more flexible than if you were in a rigid 9-to-5 industry position. So if you have other commitments that you need to attend to, or family members that you want to spend time with, perhaps this could be a way to kind of flexibly arrange your work schedule. Another popular option for engineers is entrepreneurship and startups. So if you have the next best idea or invention, you can start your own company. And I've just included on the screen here some different companies that you might know, some you might not know. But Uber was co-founded by Garrett Camp, a graduate of the University of Calgary from electrical engineering. And Instagram was created by Kevin Systrom from Stanford, also an engineering graduate. And at the bottom, I've included some startups from UBC students, one who graduated recently and another who graduated a while ago, but two very interesting companies to look into. And why entrepreneurship? You can get experience in engineering and business. You get to invent new products that you're passionate about and could be used by millions or even billions of people. And you get to fail fast and learn fast from your mistakes. So if you're a person who's very into innovation, creating things and putting it out there, this is definitely a good path. And lastly, there's some alternative paths that an engineering degree can open up to you. So these paths include medical school, law school, an MD PhD, which is a combination of medical school and a PhD. You can become a technical writer for a company, so writing technical documents for them, an information technology consultant, or even a quality manager to make sure that the technology that companies are putting out are of the highest quality and standard. So there's a lot of different things you can do with an engineering degree, and there's more that aren't included on here, but I do encourage you to look into them and to understand that, for example, I know a lot of people think you can't go to medical school unless you go through sciences, but an engineering degree can really also help you to think critically and be comfortable with a higher workload and with problem solving, and that's skills that maybe other degrees wouldn't be able to give you. So now I'll move into the social responsibilities of an engineer. There are three overarching social responsibilities. There's human safety, environmental impact, and ethics. So human safety for engineers means that we have to protect the safety, health, and welfare of the public. So no matter what the industry, all these three things, safety, health, and welfare, must be kept in mind. We have to identify the different risk factors that might exist and minimize them. So on the screen here, I have a picture of a self-driving car. And as you can see, it's identifying different objects on the road, but self-driving cars aren't necessarily as popular yet or as widespread yet as regular normal cars that we drive ourselves. And that's because the safety factor is quite low. There's still a lot of work that has to be done. And maybe in a few years from now, self-driving cars will be more popular, but until engineers can actually understand how to minimize those risks, we probably won't be seeing too many self-driving cars in these next few days. So in terms of environmental impacts, engineers must protect the environment and strive to design sustainably. So I've included a picture here on the screen of some packaging, because I know that engineers might think that there's a lot that has to go into designing a sustainable product, but there's more than just the design. There's also, how are you going to ship it out? What kind of packaging will you use? Can you make the packaging smaller? Does it have to be traveling by car, or can it be traveling by plane? These different ideas that you have to keep in your mind when you're thinking of the environmental impact. And it's becoming more and more popular to go towards sustainability. And this is something that's very important, because in the past, we used to think humans were above the environment, but now we're moving towards a hopefully more sustainable future. And that's very important to us as engineers. And lastly, engineers must consider the ethical implications of their work. So here on the screen, I have a person with an ECG electrodes on their head. So essentially, they're electrodes that are able to read brain activity. And let's say that this person with these electrodes on their heads is going to be controlling a wheelchair using their brain waves, and they're going into human test trials. So what would be some of the ethical considerations we might have to think of? Maybe we'd have to think of, is there any stimulation of the brain happening externally? How can we mitigate some of the risks that might arise? Is it ethical to do so? So there's a lot of different facets to think of, and sometimes ethics can get a little bit difficult for engineers, which is why they're very important to consider before putting technology out there. In terms of regulations and licensing, there are two regulatory bodies for BC that we are under. So the first one is Engineers Canada, and the second one is Engineers and Geoscientists British Columbia. So every province and territory has their own regulatory body, ours being Engineers and Geoscientists British Columbia. And that's just in order to account for provincial or territorial differences in context. So for example, we're close to the ocean, so some of our environmental engineering regulations, for instance, might be different than Saskatchewan, let's say, because they're not near an ocean. There's different contexts in that way. And some of the regulations for engineers is that only a licensed engineer, or in other words, a professional engineer, can sign off on a company's work and take responsibility for that work because they are the person with the most experience. You require a high degree of qualifications and experience gained through working an examination to be a licensed engineer. And licenses are only valid in the province or territory in which it's issued. So if I have a license issued in BC, I can't practice as an engineer in Quebec. And at this point, you are allowed to call yourself an engineer. So if you, right now, personally, I am an engineering student. When I graduate, I'll be an engineering graduate. And not until I get my license as an engineer can I call myself an actual engineer. So how do you get a professional engineering license? Well, first you have to graduate from a 4-year bachelor's program in engineering, then complete a minimum of 4 years of satisfactory engineering work experience under an actual professional engineer. You take the professional engineering exam and then you submit an application, pay the fees, and if you've done everything correctly, then you can get a PEng license. So as the last part of my presentation, I'll walk you through a demonstration of engineering principles. And this demonstration is essentially going to be controlling a computer game using muscles. So we have been tasked to create a computer game, a Flappy Bird game. I hope you're familiar with the game Flappy Bird, that can be played without the use of a keyboard or mouse. So instead, we will be using a signal from the body, including the biceps and the wrist, to control the movement of the characters in the game. So I'll walk you through the two sides of it. On the more science and biomechanics side, essentially, the person playing the game will be either flexing their wrist, so moving it inwards, or extending their wrist, moving it outwards to make the bird fly. And on the engineering side, when a person moves their wrist, either inward or outwards, different electrical signals can be captured by this band, the black band on the person's arm. All those black squares are called electrodes. And they will essentially be picking up the electrical signals. They'll be processed by some software so to remove any noise that we don't want and to make sure that when the muscle is activated, the signal goes up, and when the muscle is deactivated, the signal comes down, and from there, the game will be played. So I will just play a video demonstration for you all here. So this is the Myo armband device. It is capable of recording electrical activity of your muscles and recognizing gestures of the wrist, hand, and fingers based on the electrical activity recorded from 8 sensors. Each of those black rectangle boxes detects electrical activity from one area around your forearm. So the person places the band on their arm and they have to go through calibration. And essentially, this is because everyone has different arms, everyone has different muscle activity. So in order for the device to know what motions correspond to what kind of electrical activity, this person has to do different actions with their hands so that the device can become familiar with it. So as you can see, they go through a lot of different motions for the software to understand their electrical activity. It actually takes quite a bit of time, so I'll fast forward here to when they start playing the game. And so as you will see, when they move their wrist outwards, the bird goes upwards. And that's because of the electrical activity that's being detected. And when they stop moving their wrist upwards, the bird moves downwards. And so this is kind of just a demonstration of a fun little game using muscle signals. So some food for thought for all of you. What other signals produced by the body can we use to control the game? And what other devices, medical or otherwise, could we practically control using EMG or muscle signals? Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. You can find me personally at any of these socials or my email. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you, or if you wanted to have a coffee chat or a Zoom call, I'd be open to that. And I would really appreciate it if you took the time to fill out the short survey just to recap how the presentation went and if you learned anything interesting.
So if anyone that has joined us has any questions, please feel free to add those questions into the chat so that we can answer them. Questions about the student experience, questions about the projects that Coralie's worked on, anything that you have questions about, I'm sure that she's happy to answer about kind of being an engineering student and moving forward throughout her degree and soon becoming an engineer in training. So Coralie, maybe I can ask a question to get us started. What has been kind of your, I know you kind of talked at the beginning about not really knowing what engineering was, learning more and more and more. What has been your most exciting time that you've gotten to experience of like, wow, this is why engineering is so amazing. This is why I want to be an engineer. Has there been a moment for you that you've experienced so far?
Yes, there has. I think the first time I actually felt like I was doing real engineering work was in my third year design course. So we were tasked with making incubators for babies in Uganda that were born before the 9-month mark. So this project was brought to us by a biomedical engineer who worked both in Canada and Uganda. And we essentially, my team and I, had to build a device that was safe enough to be used by children either in Canada or Uganda, but was appropriate for a low resource setting and a low income setting. So instead of using a lot of the technology that we see here in North America, we had to try our best to use technology and to use materials that could be easily sourced locally in Uganda. And it was an interesting challenge, but it was also a fun way to put to use our skills in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, critical thinking. And we eventually came up with a very interesting solution. And although it was during the pandemic, we didn't actually get to build it. We got a lot of experience with different engineering tools and engineering software. And it's a project that I was really proud of by the end of it.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Well, I don't see any questions coming in the chat. Oh, I do see one question just came in. So if you could answer, what kind of courses did you take in high school that maybe prepared you for engineering? Once you kind of give your answer of what prepared you, I can also answer the specific requirements that we're looking for admission purposes.
Yeah, so for me, I took the math classes. So I took pre-calc 11, pre-calc 12, and calculus 12. I do highly recommend taking calculus 12. I don't think it's a requirement to get into UBC engineering, but it's very useful because first year calculus can be quite challenging for a lot of students. So it's good if you've seen the principles before. I took physics 11 and 12, chemistry 11 and 12. Biology 11 and 12, but again, I don't think biology is required. It was just something that I was interested in taking. And I also took computer programming when I was in grade 10 and 12. And that was also very useful because we saw, even in engineering programs that aren't computer engineering, you do use a lot of software. So in biomedical engineering, I've been using a lot of different programming languages. So it was nice to have a basis of that. I wish I had taken the robotics class at my school retrospectively. We had a very interesting electronics and 3D printing class that I didn't take because I didn't know too much about engineering and I didn't know that had anything to do with engineering. But I encourage you, if there's classes like that at your school that will help you understand how to do 3D printing, how to do any kind of different engineering principles, any coding, definitely look into that and see if it's something you'd be interested in taking.
Awesome, thank you. And I will say we do have other videos on our YouTube about all stuff about admissions, but if that is more so what your question is asking, I will mention that typically we're looking for At the grade 12 level, English, math, chemistry, and physics. And at the grade 11 level, we're looking for, again, the same thing, English, math, chemistry, and physics at the grade 11 level. If you are a current BC student, you will also be required to have a second language at the grade 11 level as well. If you're joining us from other provinces in Canada or throughout the world, we have all of those requirements on our website that you can check out. Like I said, we also have a lot of admissions videos on our YouTube channel if you're looking for more details about that. The next question, just specifically about the international requirements, so I'll add a post with that link. So if anyone else has any other questions about UBC Engineering or the student experience or anything like that, we can definitely answer those today. I will add the link. So I've just added the link to the chat as well for if you're an international student wondering what those admission requirements are as well. All right, Coralie, maybe my last question for you, in case anyone else is typing a question that they want to ask. What has been your favorite experience at UBC outside of engineering? So either a club or student experience that you've gotten to be a part of. I know a lot of your life focuses around engineering, but what other exciting things have you gotten to do in your time here?
One thing that I really enjoyed doing was the Jumpstart program. I was both a part of the Jumpstart program as a first-year student, and then I became a Jumpstart leader. So essentially, before the start of classes, I think 2 weeks before the start of class, you get to come to campus. You're put in a group of students from different faculties, and you get to just go around campus, learn about where everything is, meet different professors. It was a really good time. I met a lot of my best friends in that program. And I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in coming to UBC and meeting people before school starts, because I know as soon as school gets started, it can be kind of hectic. So it's a nice way to spend the last 2 weeks of summer. Yeah, I think it was just a really good program. I think UBC runs it very well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for presenting today. I don't see any other questions in the chat. We can stick around for a couple more minutes in case anyone has any other questions. But I do want to say a huge thank you to you, Coralie, for presenting. I know you've done some amazing things, and I can't wait to see what you get to do in your last year here. Thank you so much for presenting today. And thank you for all of you for joining and helping us celebrate International Women in Engineering Day today. So we're really happy that you were able to attend this event and to hear Coralie's presentation.